Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, Khalistan politics are positively fizzing with dynamics as India and Pakistan go at each other once again. We talk about the increasing alignment between Punjabi Sikhs and Pakistan as unconfirmed reports swirl around of at least 18 Sikh soldiers facing courts-martial for mutiny against India. Meanwhile, Pakistan wade into the argument and tear apart the carefully crafted Indian narrative that they'd been targeting Gurdwaras in India. All whilst pro-Pakistan flags and graffiti appear across the Punjab airbase as Modi delivers his pro-Bharat speech. And all further highlighting the growing relations between Khalistan and Pakistan. And if that's not enough, a British Sikh organisation formally approaches Pakistan to ask for their official support for a Khalistan referendum in Punjab. Well, also on today's show, we look at the ongoing work of United Sikhs as they help compile this year's Global Human Rights Survey. And we discuss how hard the job has been for researchers around the world to uncover the actual truth of Operation Blue Star, as so much of the official documentation has been intentionally destroyed to hide the facts of that outrageous massacre. Well, all this and more on today's packed show. But joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus. And as usual, we'll be fighting the clock on this show, so we couldn't cover everything in the news. But tomorrow, you'll definitely want to check out the show because we're going to be talking about a new battle warming up between the new Canadian Parliament and, in particular, Anita Anand and her battle with the World Sikh Organization. So we'll have that tomorrow night, as well as a brief overcap of the King's visit to Canada. But hey, the King is not on the show. He's not watching like you are at home. So you're more important to us than the King tonight. So there you go. Make sure you share your comments so that we can make sure to include you with our comments at the end of the show. Stick around. Back to you, Angus.
Who knows, maybe one day we will get King Charles on the show. But in the meantime, James and I together will bring you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And indeed, as usual, we'll take a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show. So do stay tuned for that. Right, James, let's get going. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
One of the organizations that we speak quite frequently about, Angus, is the United Sikhs and how they are a global leader when it comes to philanthropy and assisting those in need. Now, of course, for those who may not be familiar with the United Sikhs, they are very much involved in humanitarian issues, but also human rights, tracking everything from racism in various countries to dealing with the racism and biases to try and educate the general public on Sikhi principles and bring those to light to create a more inclusive world as everybody getting together. Now, if you are someone, first of all, who is dealing with hate-based crimes or dealing with racism or bigotry and bias, you can always go to the United Sikhs website and they have different resources and options for you to be able to report those issues. And this way, you are not alone. You have people that are there to help you and to get you through it. Now, with that said, of course, that is just one of the many ways in which the United Sikh organization helps people globally. Now, right now, they are participating or running a campaign of surveys, and that is the Human Rights Survey of 2025. They are encouraging people to go online and fill it out, whether you are Sikh or not. And they want to know a lot of different things about your experiences, your lived experiences, regardless as to where you are in the world. We know that there is a lot of misunderstanding of a lot of different religions, and by people being able to understand them more, that brings acceptance, tolerance, and hopefully more unity. This is something that we've seen through a lot of different programs, but also through our own as we work as a bridge between our Caucasianness, you could say, and the Sikh world to try to bridge that gap and educate others both inside and outside of the Sikh world as we share our perspectives on things. Now, there is also the recognition, of course, by the Sikhs of the human race being one. And And there is just a little link with about 8 questions on the website that just very simple, very easy to do. And I actually took part in the survey. Even as a non-Sikh, my voice could be heard as well. And you just go to unitedsikhs.org and you can click right on the homepage to this survey. They will, again, be releasing the results once they've been tabulated. I'm not exactly sure, and forgive me for this, but I'm not sure how long this survey will last and when they are looking to actually compile all of the data and release it in a report. But of course, I will be following up, and I've sent an email out to the United Sikhs to get more information about this so that we can keep you up to date, as this is an important issue for people, not only viewers of our program, but people around the world. Now, if you're unfamiliar, again, as I said, with the Sikh organization, or United Sikhs, they are involved, as you can see on the screen here, they're involved in humanitarian aid, and that is all over the globe, and just amazing work. I've had the pleasure of witnessing their work firsthand and jumping in to help at various locations worldwide. So again, just amazing work, amazing volunteers, and the dedication that they have is second to none. They also work with civil rights organizations in order to not only bring up civil rights issues and try to fight for equality on the international stage, but also for other minority groups as well. It's not just about the Sikhs, and they look out for everyone. And that's the beauty of it, because you see a lot of organizations that are fighting to get justice for one particular group of people, but the United Sikhs want to bring people together, and that as a collective to fight human rights abuses, whether it's inside of India, which we know there are a lot of human rights abuses, or whether or not that's in Canada, in the UK, in Australia, in anywhere in the world. So again, just amazing work. And of course, the empowerment program. And essentially what they are looking to do is empower more people in lower income areas to be educated, to bring education to those who may not otherwise have an opportunity to learn, and to bring themselves up out of poverty, or to bring them to the next level of life through education programs. So again, the work that they do is just so impressive, Angus, that they lead the world in terms of showing people how it's done with all of the work that they're doing globally. So.
Yeah, there are lots of organisations like this in the community who do such sterling work, such really important, good work, not just for the community, but for society in general. And this is just yet another initiative that is being pushed by the community. And this actually is extraordinarily important. And I can't stress how important surveys like these are. They do appear periodically, but they are so important because they do form such a powerful weapon in the fight against oppression, against hate crime. And I would certainly urge all our audience to seek this out, sign it, fill it in, contribute, get your opinions across, because as we often say, hate crime does exist. It is sadly too prevalent right across the world, certainly across the Western diaspora. And the only way that things can change, that the governments can tackle this surge of hate crime, is by understanding, firstly, the nature of it. What is it? How is it happening? Where is it happening? And secondly, how often it's happening. Data is king. Data is the most important thing. I know it's very boring and dry statistics, but ultimately it is those statistics that people like our audience can contribute to. Just even in their simple individual voices, it's the collection of all that data that can then be presented to the decision makers, the policy makers. If they understand what the problem is, they can do something about it, but they can only understand what the problem is if they've got the data to support it. So it's very, very important that our audience, wherever possible, do contribute towards this survey and surveys like it, so that those who are promoting and lobbying for change and improvement across the diaspora, they've got the necessary weapons. They need evidence. To change any policy or to create policy, you need evidence. And this is what they need to provide that sort of evidence. So it's really, really important. And of course, not least, because in the bigger picture, in the bigger scheme of things, when we're always fighting against transnational oppression from India particularly, and the failure of Indian democracy, and of course the persecution of the Sikh community within India itself, human rights is always the one element that comes up on a regular basis. So all the human rights organizations around the world, whether it's Amnesty International or whatever, they all have similar surveys, but they all produce annual reports which always point to the Indian government for persecuting and oppressing the human rights of minorities like the Sikhs. They need evidence like this. So the more reports that are out there, or with all the data backed up by as many contributors as possible, these are the arsenal. This is the arsenal. These are the weapons that allow these organisations to change governments' policies, to start targeting the Indian government, to stop them persecuting the minorities, to even bring about Khalistan. So I can't even stress enough how important surveys like this are. So please get out there, contribute, get your opinion across. It really does matter, however small you think your opinion is.
Absolutely, Angus. And keep in mind that, of course, it also helps the organization to really allocate their funding where it is needed. And of course, they are very big in terms of educating the public and trying to create education and awareness campaigns to prevent the racial-based crime or bias and such. So again, because they are an NGO and they work as a nonprofit, it's important for them to be able to maximize every dollar in which they are spending. And by you participating in this survey, that helps them to allocate the funds more effectively. And in the end, it helps all communities by focusing that. And as I say, focusing on the information and communities, of course, we know that we've been focusing on another part of the Sikh community, and that is the tragedy that happened in 1984 with the attacks on the Golden Temple, as well as the genocide that took place against Sikhs. Last night, we looked at some of the old documents or an old newspaper report from the New York Times where it only claimed about 400 deaths at the time in 1984. That article was from January the 10th of 1984, and that was the information. Since that time, of course, we know clearly that that number was up in the thousands, that there were innocent people on a pilgrimage that were caught in that as well. So it is a lot of false data. Now, a lot of the false information was portrayed or put out there by the India government, by the India military, and others, as well as potentially international parties and international governments that didn't want to have their names or their government associated with the bloodbath that was Operation Blue Star. And at the end of the day, we have to look and say, all right, where is all of the data now? And unfortunately, whether it was in the raids on not only the Golden Temple, but other gurdwaras across the nation, there were so many documents that were destroyed. There were so many publications that were just disappeared. Who knows if they're still floating out there in somebody's attic that they've been hiding for all these decades. But here as well, when you search online, you can find the odd bit of documentation. And this, for example, talks about targeting not only Mr. Bindrawali, but others as well. And they were targeting Sikhs in 1984. And these letters actually are from February of 1984 before and January, long before Operation Blue Star. But it shows where they were targeting certain individuals, including Mr. Bindrawali and others, in not only India, but also in England and in the United States. They were watching these individuals. They were planning attacks, and right here in this documentation shows that they were looking to participate in extrajudicial killings on foreign soil. And that is very clear by some of these documents, including the ones on the screen right now. And this is very concerning because of the fact that some of these documents are out there in the public, but people are not aware of them. So now with the influx of information coming out on the internet from archives and people who are locating documents that they didn't even realize that maybe family members had kept as evidence, and then maybe the family members were lost or the documents were misplaced, and now they can come out. So I'm encouraging everybody out there, if you have any documents that may or may not be directly related to this or other events or the genocide, by all means, get them out on the internet, get them out and share them. Send me a copy. I would love to be able to start compiling them as well, because it shows that there was a well thought out, well planned attack that was months, if not years in the making. And the more documentation that comes out, the more of the truth will come out, because we've been scratching at the surface. And when I say we, I don't mean us particularly on the show. I'm talking about just the public in general, especially the Sikh community needs to get at the truth and be able to expose the governments that were involved in this tragic event, in the genocide, the loss of life of not only soldiers, but of women, children, grandparents, people who were innocent and had no business having their lives taken. People were raped in the streets. They were dragged by their hair. They were hung up by their arms and left in that position for days at a time. I mean, the horrific events of 1984 need to be exposed in totality. And by remaining silent or by keeping these documents aside and not sharing them, again, you are really fighting against the whole principle of bringing the truth to the masses. And that is essential. So if you or anybody you know has some documents or images, video, probably not much video from back in 1984, unless you had a big clunky camera. But in any event, by all means, there are many archives on the internet where you can actually upload your documentation, including the one at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, that we spoke of just the other day, as they held their conference on the 1984 genocide, as well as the Air India events, which they were more focused on Air India. But again, they are creating such a massive historic archive collection to really document that period of time. So by all means, make sure that you speak out. We've also come across documents, official documents from Downing Street and other locations that tie directly certain individuals of the UK government to the Operation Blue Star events and the genocide that took place. Whether they were directly in any consultation in terms of the actual orders, that has yet to be determined, but we know that they were aware of the potential deaths and the mass casualties that could potentially take place, and then they claimed that they were not aware beforehand, although they were supposed to be notified by the Indian government that it was going to take place beforehand, but they found out afterwards, allegedly. But there's a lot of documentation that's coming to light, and again, I invite everybody to really speak out and share that, because it's a part of history that needs to be documented, it needs to be recorded, it needs to be made public, and most of all, it's also essential when Khalistan is formed that this will make a big part of the history of Khalistan and document it for future generations, Angus.
Indeed, and the events of Operation Blue Star, of course, they reflect one of the most darkest periods of Indian history, and it was a shameful stain on the history of India. But of course, the only eyewitnesses to Operation Blue Star were the perpetrators and the victims, because India very cynically and very deliberately ensured that the massing crowds of global press were not allowed to see what happened. They were, as I said in yesterday's show, they were deliberately bussed away, they were bundled onto buses, driven to the Punjab border and dropped off just before Operation Blue Star was launched, so that they could not then witness and report the dreadful events, the criminal events of Operation Blue Star. So it has been beholden really on the Sikh community to archive as much as possible. And one thing the Sikh community have been very good at is archiving their history. And of course, many have laid down their lives for doing that very thing. Just once in Kalra, prime example amongst many who have deliberately gone out there at great efforts, great inconvenience to themselves, to archive, to go through the history, to research and dig up the evidence to prove those awful events of not just 1984, Operation Blue Star, the genocide, but also the ongoing extrajudicial killings that went on in the Punjab in the 80s and 90s. And many, as I say, have been martyred because of that. They've been murdered themselves by the Indian state to try and bury the evidence. And this is what it's all about, because the Indian government since 1984 has done its absolute level best to ensure that the truth never comes out. They're burying as much of it as they can. They're destroying documents. They're basically ensuring wherever possible, wherever they have any form of control, that they can ensure that the truth does not come out. So there's this ongoing battle between the Sikh community trying to archive and uncover the truth up against the Indian state, who is doing their level best to destroy any evidence, particularly any official documentation that would support the truth. So it is so important that the Sikh community continue this amazing work that they're doing to archive stuff like this, to ensure that these documents are uncovered, that they are archived safely. Fortunately, the internet is, like I often use the metaphor, it's like trying to squeeze a balloon. You try and suppress it somewhere, it'll always pop out somewhere else. It's very difficult to destroy information on the internet. It has that wonderful ability to ensure that information does disseminate and stay in existence. So, but yeah, very important that people continue to uncover the truth, that the events of 1984 are archived forevermore for future generations so that they never forget. Now, what is the truth, James, you referred to there about the official narrative? The official Indian narrative was, 400 and something officially dead after Operation Blue Star. In reality, we do know it was actually numbered in the tens of thousands. Estimates literally vary between 10,000 and 20,000. We do know that there were literally tens of thousands of families, of men, women and children in the complex at the time, celebrating the Gurparab on the 3rd of June. So, of course, the complex was packed with families, thousands and thousands of families. Now, there was then there was a curfew laid, the doors were locked, essentially, nobody was allowed out. And then the Indian army waded in with mortars, tanks, full-on weaponry, high-caliber weapons, and they just launched missiles and rounds into the complex indiscriminately. And you try and tell me that only 400 people were killed? Absolutely not. So even logic says the Indian official state is absolute nonsense. They're lying, basically. So this is why, again, archiving this material, digging out the truth is always so important. And of course that extends to the genocide in November. Fortunately, there were a lot more witnesses to that one. But of course then the ongoing events of the 1980s and 1990s, of which many have laid down their lives trying to report. Those events, of course, have been archived and must continue to be archived, just to discover the true extent of India's murder of Sikhs during that period, James.
Absolutely, Angus, and it's really telling some of the documentation, some of the information that's coming out. And I mean, you can look at these documents that are on the screen. You can see where they had been planning. And it says even right here is that the matter we discussed about one particular person, he will be taken care of very soon and all arrangements are done. Payment will be done on the completion of the job. I'm sure our plan will work. If you look at the other documents that were on the screen, you'll see they're actually talking about the assassination of a certain individual. And and then it goes on. There's other confirmations here that they claimed that, or they assumed that by going in with the military during the daytime, during the time that they did, that most of the supporters of Bhindranwale would be scared, people would flee from the site and so on. Meanwhile, documentation that we uncovered recently that I actually shared with you, Angus, clearly dictated that the one person who had offered advice to the India government advised them to do a night strike with paratroopers and other military members so that they didn't have the bloodshed and the number of deaths that ended up taking place. So they went and acted outside of that, where an actual letter to the UK government outlined that the military took over and did it their own way, as opposed to the planned strategy of using law enforcement and special operatives and commandos or whatever, but not using the direct military, and that went sideways as well. So the more we look at it, the more it's very clear that there was a much bigger involvement by various governments, and as well the India government's lack of control over the situation, and let the military just go in and slaughter men, women, and children. And that is just disgusting. But it again is even more deplorable in the fact that so few people have been held to account for any of those actions that took place in 1984. So with that said, Angus, I'll just remind our viewers that there is a sovereignty rally taking place in San Francisco on June the 7th, starting at 10 o'clock a.m. This will be forming at 10 a.m. in the plaza at the address is 88 2nd Street in San Francisco. At 12 noon, it will march over to the city center plaza, and at that point, there will be a lot of guest speakers and human rights activists and all that will address the crowd there from 2 to 4 p.m. So if you're in the California area, I encourage you to take part in that sovereignty rally, Angus.
Absolutely. Please be there. Get your faces seen, get your voices heard, and most of all, don't forget your Khalistan flag to fly it proudly. Right, James, let us move on to my first story. And of course, we've been following this war of words between Pakistan and India that succeeded the war of bullets and bombs. The war of words has really ramped up. It still just will not die down. And there's all sorts of accusations flying backwards and forwards. And I just want to do a quick summary of the latest, sort of the updates of what is being reported. Some of it questionable, some of it does seem to be supported. But ultimately, I mean, just even overnight, a Pakistan news channel, Ari News, carried a report, hasn't been corroborated, but this report states that 18 Sikh soldiers in the Indian army have been arrested and have been questioned. And apparently, it surrounds the April 22nd attack, the Pahalgam attacks in J&K. And according to an Indian media outlet, Republic TV report, the detailed soldiers are likely to face court-martial proceedings for what is called insubordination, refusal to participate in military operations. Now, again, a lot of this information is a bit questionable, and the original tweets that sort of pointed to this no longer exist. Why? Have they been closed down by the Hindutva forces? We don't know. Maybe they were false. Maybe it was misinformation. We don't know. But there does seem to be, I would say, a little bit of a core of reporting around this story that 18 soldiers had actually defied orders, posted critical commentary on social media about India, the Indian army, and they have actually gone on social media publicly as soldiers questioning the Pahalgam incident, basically labelling it as a false flag operation. So they also believe that the whole thing was designed to deliberately malign Pakistan. So, alongside this, and what does seem to be a little bit more supportive, there is actually now video evidence of this, is that apparently, we reported last week that Narendra Modi had visited Adampur Air Base in Punjab because he's located a whole squadron of nuclear-armed jet fighters to Adampur Air Force Base, essentially to shore up the Indian border region with Pakistan, which of course has been met with huge Sikh resistance. Sikhs are saying, look, please don't put your dirty nuclear weapons on our land. We just don't want them here. We don't support this whole attack on Pakistan, and we certainly don't want the Indian Army's worst weaponry located on our soil. Anyway, but Narendra Modi, he appeared in Adampur Air Base, gave this sort of great speech, this very sort of Jai Hind, pro-Bharat speech, very jingoistic, nationalistic speech. Well, apparently, whilst this was going on, It is reported that, raw footage has been released, video footage of, on the airbase, a Pakistan flag being raised and slogans written on the wall reading, "Sikhs welcome the Pakistan Army," and of course the Khalistan flag hoisted at Kudpur station near Adhampur Air Force Base. So it does look like that a group of locals, whether they were military personnel or not, we don't know, but pro-Pakistan, anti-India graffiti has appeared, Khalistan flags have appeared. Basically, it is pointing to the fact that, again, there seems to be this element that we report on within the Indian Army that is questioning their senior officers, that is questioning the Indian government's usage of the army to fight Pakistan, saying, no, we don't agree with this. And there is, again, these rumblings of a potential mutiny. As I say, there's a lot of smoke. We can't find the fire yet, but certainly there is no smoke without fire. And there's an awful lot of evidence pointing to the fact that there are some very, very unhappy Sikh soldiers and airmen in the Indian forces. And I suspect that Narendra Modi is sitting on a bit of a powder keg within his armed forces, if there are indeed these unhappy rumbling Sikhs. So as a result of this, and of course one of the central figures, as is often the case in stirring up trouble and anti-India sentiment, is Sikhs for Justice, and Gurpratap Singh Pannoon has been, as usual, vocal, wading in to the situation to stir up this potential mutiny. And he's actually called for what he calls a direct action plan between the 1st and the 6th of June, as he says, to force the relocation of Indian Air Force and Army cantonments from the Punjab. So basically, he's campaigning now from America to say, look, the Punjab does not want your dirty weaponry, the Indian Army weaponry, on Punjab soil. So what he said, he's calling for a siege of Indian Air Force bases in the Punjab and Haryana between those dates, to block entry routes to the bases at Ambala, Adhampur, Pathankot, Bathinda and Army cantonments, cutting off the power and water supplies to the Air Force bases and the Army bases, and mobilising Sikh youth across Punjab to enforce the blockade of Indian Army installations. So he's talking for direct action. He's really calling for Sikhs in the area to take direct action to try and isolate these bases, starve them of essential resources like electricity and water, etc. Now, he needs to be a little bit careful here, because there are democratic protests and there are basically, well, I would say, civil unrest. And if he pushes towards civil unrest, which this is, I would say, on the borderline, it does give Narendra Modi the legitimate excuse to send in the army and start firing at civilians. It really could generate some pretty nasty scenes here. So we need to be a little bit careful here. We always support democratic protests, but when it starts turning into, well, let's say crossing that area into dangerous civil unrest and violence, that can cause a fairly nasty situation. So we need to keep an eye on that one. Pannoon has also, as part of this call for action in June, he's also calling the 6th to the 10th of June as D-Day. And he again reports that there are 6 soldiers in the army who are being under investigation for alleged insubordination. They are facing court-martial. As a result, Pannoon has actually sent a direct message to Pakistan's Field Marshal Asim Munir. Now, as Pannoon reports, 6 soldiers have publicly thanked the Pakistan Army for exposing India's disinformation campaign regarding, for example, the fake missile attack on the Darbar Sahib. Secondly, he did say that 6 soldiers have declared their open readiness to join the Pakistan Army in this standoff, and in response to the Modi government's international campaign aimed at justifying its aggression against Pakistan. So he's basically really trying to promote the Sikhs within the Indian Army, this narrative that they are actually, firstly, unhappy with the Indian Army, secondly, that they are quite prepared to join the Pakistan Army, and thirdly, quite publicly say, look, to the Indian government, you cannot do this. We do not agree with this anti-Pakistan aggression. We think it comes with a different agenda. There is a hidden agenda behind this. It's nothing to do with the Pahalgam attack and the fact that the Pahalgam attack was a false flag. So, Panoon claims that over 100 Sikh soldiers are ready to defect to the Pakistan army and actually fight against India. So he says these days of 6th of June to the 10th of June, as he calls D-Day, the soldiers plan to coincide this action to internationalise India's attempt to attack Pakistan. And he compares it to, firstly, the Indian army attacking the Darbar Sahib, but he also he brings in 1984 here, because of course after Operation Blue Star, James, as we've been talking about, when the news leaked out of Blue Star, 6 soldiers in the Indian army, a whole regiment, a whole battalion of the Sikh regiment did actually desert their posts near Poon. And seized control of Bombay Airport, Delhi Airport as is now, but Bombay Airport, they seized control of it to try and highlight to the world, to tell the world, do you realise what's just happened at the Darbar Sahib? The Indian army have just attacked the most holy sacred site. They've just murdered tens of thousands of innocent men, women and children. So as a result, 6 soldiers took control of Bombay Airport to highlight to the world what was going on. And likewise, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, a load of Sikh soldiers did desert also their regiment and started marching towards Amritsar to support the fight against the Indian army. They wanted to go support Bhindranwale. They were actually stopped and disarmed on the way, on the march to Amritsar. So again, the precedent is there that Sikh soldiers are loyal to Sikhs first, to India second. So Narendra Modi just needs to be a little bit careful here. I think it is very likely he underestimates the loyalty of Sikh soldiers to their own community, to the benefits of their own community, and they always, as we always say, stand up for injustice. And if Narendra Modi is guilty of injustice, then he will become the target. So a warning. Now, to wrap this segment up, a very interesting video has emerged there was a press conference that was given a couple of days ago by Lieutenant General Ahmed Sharif. He is a senior officer, a very senior officer in the Pakistan Army. And I just want to play you this video that shows you, he was asked various questions about what's been going on, essentially about this war of words. This is his response. The question was asked, and he gives a very interesting response of his opinion of just what is going on.
साथ एक बहुत बड़े पैमाने पर एक प्रोपेगेंडा बहुत वसी पैमाने पर फैलाया जा रहा है और पाकिस्तान पर इल्ज़ाम लगाया गया कि गोल्डन टेम्पल पर पाकिस्तान ने हमला किया, सिखों की जो मुख्तलिफ मजहबी मकामात हैं उसको निशाना बनाया गया। इस पर आपकी टेक चाहिए कि क्या ये भी उसी नौइयत की फिजा क्रिएट करने की कोशिश है?
इंडिया ने अपना जो अमृतसर का इलाका है, जनरल एरिया, वहाँ पे प्रोजेक्टाइल्स फायर किए। हमने आपको उनकी ट्रेजेक्टरीज भी दिखाई, एंड दैट इज बेसिकली ए सिख मेजॉरिटी एरिया। ननकाना साहब जो है, विच इज़ ए वेरी रिस्पेक्टफुल और काबिल एहतराम जगह है सिख कम्युनिटी की इन पाकिस्तान के पंजाब में, उसके ऊपर जो ड्रोन्स भेजे, देयर वाज ए डेलिबरेट अटेम्प्ट मेड टू अटैक दैट होली प्लेस, जो कि पाकिस्तान ने फाइल की। अब ये जो गोल्डन टेम्पल का, जैसे आपने कहा, ये वी हैव आल्सो फॉलोड इट अप के इंडियन मीडिया पे, इनफैक्ट उनके जो उनसे मिलिट्री ऑफिशियल, सीनियर मिलिट्री ऑफिशियल ने आके ये बातचीत की। देखिए, फैक्ट्स अगेन बड़े क्लियर हैं। पाकिस्तान का जो अवाम है, स्पेशली जो पाकिस्तान के पंजाब है, इसकी और जो सिख कम्युनिटी है, इनकी एक बड़ी क्लोज कल्चरल एफिनिटी है, चाहे वो लैंग्वेज में हो, कस्टम्स में हो। एक प्यार का, मोहब्बत का रिश्ता है, एक रिस्पेक्ट का रिश्ता है, जो आप देखते हैं जब सिख यात्री यहाँ पे आते हैं तो कितनी मोहब्बत से पाकिस्तान के अवाम जो है उनको वेलकम करते हैं, गले लगाते हैं। आप उसे फील नहीं करते हैं? एक प्यार, मोहब्बत आपको नजर आती है। सिख मजहब की बड़ी जो अहम मुकद्दस मकामात हैं वो पाकिस्तान में पंजा साहब है, ननकाना साहब है, करतारपुर साहब है और दीगर हैं। हम ना सिर्फ उनकी हिफाजत करते हैं, हम उनका ख्याल करते हैं, हम उसको फैसिलिटेट करते हैं या नहीं करते? तो अगर पाकिस्तान ने हिंदुस्तान पे किसी जगह पे हमला करना है तो वाई ऑन वन प्लेस, वाई वुड पाकिस्तान डू दैट? कोई इसकी लॉजिक है, कोई अकल है? इसलिए कहते हैं नैरेटिव, जब आप झूठ बनाते हैं तो झूठ बनाते हैं, कुछ सोच तो लिया करें ना, बात क्या करने लगे।
So very unambiguously, this Lieutenant General is making a very simple accusation, saying, look, India are guilty of not just spreading deep misinformation, is that they are a genuine threat to their own Sikh community. And he talks about this huge relationship between Pakistan Punjab and, of course, the counterparts in Indian Punjab. And the logic, as he says, is why would we attack? Why would we attack people who essentially that we have a deep respect for? And yes, of course, there is going to be, I would say, a lot of propaganda from both sides, and Pakistan probably will be guilty of broadcasting propaganda. But I have to say, I tend to. He's an army officer. Army officers, on the whole, do not tend to lie. They are just through their life training. They are trained just to be honest, upfront, straight, and just do their job. They are tools of a state. They tend not to lie, particularly in press conferences. And so I tend to sort of believe this guy, and he does come across as very credible. And he just says, look, why would we attack the Darbar Sahib or any Sikh installations or Sikh assets in India? It just makes no logical sense. And the evidence, as he points out, said, look at the evidence. The Kartarpur Sahib, for example, there are loads of these really important sites, these gurdwaras in Pakistan, in Pakistan Punjab, that we have not just protected and taken care of, we've actually provided open access to the Sikhs in Indian Punjab to cross whenever they want. And this, we've reported on this regularly, is that the evidence is absolutely plain to see. In simple black and white terms, India is constantly persecuting its Sikh population. Pakistan has always been kind and nurturing and benefited at every possible angle its Sikh population, and indeed Indian Sikhs. It has welcomed Indian Sikhs into Pakistan to visit the various Gurdwara, whether it's Kartarpur or wherever. So the evidence is actually very, very clear. And again, if just taking an objective opinion on this, it's very clear which side's propaganda is credible and which side's propaganda is incredible, James. So I think that simple press conference, I think, speaks volumes to me, certainly.
Absolutely, and I got a little chuckle at the end when he's asking just very simply, does this make sense? Why is India basically not, why are they so stupid to think that people aren't going to put two and two together? That's essentially what he's saying at the end. So I just thought, great way to call them out on it, because we know how the propaganda machine works from India. We know that, Pakistan is not above being, involved in a propaganda war. But at the same time, I'm with you, Angus. I find that completely credible. And it's a completely legitimate argument in my world. They would be looking at targets that are going to have an impact on Modi and the government there. They're not going to go after the temples or after the Gurdwaras. And, I'm totally with you. I find that very credible.
Indeed. And I think even a word of caution here, and even some of our commenters in our audience have made this sort of caution, saying, look, just be a bit careful with Pakistan. Ultimately, the Sikh community are a pawn and have been used as a pawn in this war of words and indeed a physical war in the past between both Pakistan and India. And it suits Pakistan's narrative at the moment to be friendly to the Sikhs. Of course, it helps foment trouble and division in India. So, of course, they will certainly go out of their way to befriend the Sikh community. But the Sikh community does need to be a little bit careful because, can it trust Pakistan? Ultimately, Pakistan is interested in its own interests. It's looking after its own self, as indeed is India. And at this present time, the Sikh community, it just happens to be useful for Pakistan. So it does need to be a little bit careful here. But the ultimate solution, and I think the lesson to the Sikh community here is it needs to be independent. It does need to say thank you to Pakistan, thank you for your support, show your support by actually letting us become an independent state, because then we can still remain friends, we can stay allies. But likewise to India, we can also ally with you as well, India. But we will remain neutral between the two of you, and we can have those amicable relations. And I think that really is the lesson for the Sikh community, is try and stay as neutral as possible in the situation so that Khalistan can be established and both sides will actually acquiesce at worst, but actually support it at best, the establishment of that sovereign Sikh nation. So on that note, James, I'm going to move conveniently on to my second story, which actually relates to this very same point. An organisation here in the UK, Kestri Lahar, which is a very, I would say, a very strongly lobbying organisation here in the UK that always takes takes a very public view on certainly stories relating to Khalistan and human rights and abuse of human rights of the Sikh community. They do take these issues and do lobby very hard to bring them first into the public domain and secondly to try and change policies, to try and change the situation. And of course they have now taken advantage of this current situation, this prevailing war of words again between Pakistan and India, and of course Pakistan's very public support of the Sikhs in the Punjab, and particularly Indian Punjab. And they have written a letter to Sardar Ramesh Singh Arora calling for action and certainly for to move this whole great movement forward about Khalistan. And what they have said, that they've said on behalf of Kesri Lahar, UK and Scotland, they've submitted this open letter to Sardar Ramesh Singh Arora. He is the Minister for Minorities Affairs in Punjab, Pakistan, so on the Pakistan side of Punjab. And this letter urges him to use his position to request that the government of Pakistan formally support a United Nations-led binding referendum on the independence of Indian-occupied Punjab. So this is really quite significant. Now, Sardar Ramesh Singh Arora, he is this he is this minister. He's actually, he's a Sikh himself, and he is the first Sikh minister in Pakistan. He's a very successful Sikh on the Pakistan side. So, of course, his natural affinity, his natural loyalty is, of course, going to be to the Sikh community. So a very cleverly timed letter to him from Kesri Lahar saying, look, you know what's going on. You know the persecution that the Sikh community have suffered, particularly in India and now across the diaspora. Now is the time for you, in your formal position that you, through your own personal success, have achieved, you now have the ability, the power to lobby your own government to say, look, yes, there is absolutely a democratic right for the Sikh community in India to ask for a referendum. What's the problem in that? Where is any argument against that? It stands up to all normal democratic requirements, so why wouldn't you support it? So the letter itself references the growing demand, of course, as we report regularly, for this self-determination by Punjabis based on the Punjab independence map that was actually circulated by Sikhs for Justice. There are sort of various connotations of this. And the Khalistan Caucus Foundation itself in the US has actually come up with their own map as well. But ultimately, whichever map you use, there is this argument that there should be the establishment of a sovereign state of Khalistan. Now, under international law, such a referendum must include all native residents currently living in Punjab, regardless of religion or background. So this is what this letter to the minister has stated. Now, the letter also, in the context of arguing for this referendum, it raises serious concerns about the pattern of transnational repression against Sikh and Khalistan activists, and specifically references Hardeep Singh Nijjar, Avtar Singh Kandar here in the UK, who died under very suspicious circumstances, but the weight of evidence, the weight of probability does fall on the likelihood he was murdered by the Indian state, and that also happened around the same time as the murder of Nijjar. And indeed in Pakistan, this is relevant to Pakistan, is Paramjit Singh Panjwar. He was murdered in Lahore around the same time. In fact, it was just a couple or 2 or 3 weeks before the murder of Nijjar. So again, that has been linked to the Indian government and the operations of RAW. And as the letter states, these assassinations have caused deep alarm within the Sikh and Punjabi communities globally. And they say, Kesri Lahar say, it is time for international bodies to act decisively against repression and in favour of democratic rights. So the organisation calls on the government of Pakistan to publicly back a UN-facilitated referendum on Punjab's future, to demand international investigations into the killings of Sikh activists, and to protect those engaging in peaceful political advocacy. Of course, Khalistan campaigners, they need that protection because they are campaigning democratically and peacefully. And they urge the government, certainly the government of Pakistan, but they urge the minister to lobby the Pakistan government to promote this movement for an independent referendum, I can't say that word, that referendum for a sovereign nation of Khalistan in Indian in Indian Punjab. So there you go, James. I think it is just one voice of many clamouring for a referendum in Punjab, but I think this is a very clever, shrewd move by Khalistan Referendum. They are actually realising that at this moment in time, with everything going on, the dynamics between India and Pakistan, they know they need international support to get Khalistan established. Well, what better way than to get at least one of the parties between Pakistan and India to say, actually, you know what, I think this is a good idea. It is likely that Pakistan would support a referendum because when Pakistan looks at it totally selfishly and looking after their own interests, of course they will take every opportunity to provoke India, to create problems for India. So of course, why wouldn't they support a democratic referendum in the Punjab, particularly if it causes any hurt to their enemy, India? So it is very likely that the Pakistan government would support this. So why not get that ball rolling? Why not get this thing in motion? Write a letter to Sardar Ramesh Singh Arora, the minister in Punjab, to get him in turn to lobby the Pakistan government saying, it's a good idea. We win out of this. It helps Pakistan's interests, so why not do it? In turn, of course, it helps the whole Khalistan movement massively because it then gets a very, very powerful advocate on the international stage at the United Nations, therefore, to push for a referendum. It's going to become harder and harder for India to resist this if more and more nations, of course, Pakistan will likely support it, but then in turn, more and more nations allied with Pakistan will say, yeah, actually, why not? I think this is a good idea. And so that will build up this movement, this momentum within the United Nations, which then hopefully will pressure India, saying, you call yourself the world's largest democracy, prove it. Hold a referendum. There you go, James. Very clever.
Absolutely. A great way to do it. And, they could potentially have another name to add to that list with the recent murder of Harjit Singh. Sorry, I forgot the last name there. But regardless, Dada, that was it, sorry. But yeah, I mean, they could be looking at adding his name as the Bishnoi gang took responsibility for that or made claims of responsibility. So again, it shows the lengths at which India is ready to really shut down any referendum or anybody that opposes the India government or wants to further the cause of Khalistan. So I think that if if Pakistan was to support Punjab Sikhs and say, come on over, let's get this referendum done on our side of the border even. Maybe that's an option. But again, what would that do to infuriate Modi and use that as an opportunity to attack more Sikhs that want to cross the border or come back in to India after the referendum is held. So again, if the world and the UN was to be at the lead of it, then it really ties Modi's hands. So I think this is a very, very wise way to go about it, and to encompass the international community really gives some guarantee of security, but also credibility to it.
Indeed, and in fact, when I first read the letter, I thought it was slightly ambiguous. Are they pressuring for a referendum to be held in Pakistan, Punjab as well? But actually, in fact, when you reread it, it is specific. It is the independence of Indian-occupied Punjab. And it is unlikely, therefore, that I think Pakistan would allow a referendum within its own Punjab, because it certainly doesn't want to lose its own Punjab. So there's, I suppose, you could argue a little bit a case of double standards there. But ultimately, well, the Sikh community will take whatever it can. And if Pakistan supports an Indian Punjab referendum, absolutely take that and bank that. Thank you very much. So, right, James, let's as we're running out of time, let's rush into our comment section as the clock marches down. Mastan Singh Dillai starts us off with a demand that the United Kingdom should admit and also apologise for the Sikh massacres in India in 1984. Well, I think to be pedantic on this, I don't think the UK has too much to apologise about 1984, other than its involvement in Blue Star to the extent of what advice it gave. And this is why we need this investigation. We need to find the truth. What contribution did the UK make towards Operation Blue Star? We don't know for sure, other than that there was some advice given, probably by the SAS. At the moment, there's not enough information to demand an apology yet. So I would just be a bit pedantic saying, let's just wait. First of all, we need an investigation to find out what the truth was. And then if the UK is guilty of anything, it must apologise. Simple as that. So I'd just be pedantic on that one. But as we continue this, Knockdown wades in by saying, look, has a very strong opinion on this. Look, let's just stop this. We don't have time to waste time to argue about these sorts of issues. What we need is Sikh and British Empire treaties documents. Once we have Khalistan, only after we have Khalistan, let's deal with these issues. Trying to raise these sorts of issues are actually just a distraction. They're designed to derail the Khalistan movement. So I think this is an interesting point, Jez, where saying, look, all these are sideshows, these demands for apologies, whether it's for Jallianwala Bagh or for 1984, it doesn't matter. What matters at the moment, we need to focus on the Khalistan movement, the Khalistan campaign, get the referendum, get Khalistan established, then, and only then, is it worth pursuing these sorts of issues, James?
Absolutely, but playing devil's advocate there, Angus, is that, of course, if there was clear evidence of the involvement of the UK government, then they could utilize that as leverage in order to get further support for Khalistan. So I think there's an argument for both sides of it, but I do think that you have to really keep your eye on the prize and keep going with what's today, what's tomorrow, and what's Khalistan going to look like in a few years. So.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, James. I think you've raised a cracking point there, is that behind the scenes is that if evidence it does emerge of British involvement in Blue Star that is quite embarrassing or shameful, then there's a lot of leverage, let's just call it for what it is, blackmail, that the Khalistan movement can use against the British government, saying, look, you support Khalistan, you throw your weight into the establishment of Khalistan, and we won't bring this information out. We will bury it ourselves. We will help you bury it, or we will put a positive spin on it if in return you support Khalistan. So there could be a bit of a pragmatic bit of real politics to be done behind the scenes based on that. So we'll see. Gobind Singh.
That's right.
The worst part is the precedent set by Michael O'Dwyer that has become the norm in Punjab. Well, who was Michael O'Dwyer? Michael O'Dwyer was actually I forget his actual formal title, but he basically was in charge of the Punjab in the early 20th century, and certainly he was there. He was in charge of Punjab in 1919, the day of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre that was perpetrated by General Dyer. And he actually supported publicly General Dyer's actions of opening fire on the gathering in the square of Jallianwala Bagh that massacred hundreds of Sikhs. And actually, there were Hindus there as well, but primarily there were Sikhs that were murdered in that massacre. And it was O'Dwyer who was in charge. He was the British civil servant in charge of Punjab at the time. He publicly supported General Dyer's actions on that day. He then, of course, by doing that, not only shamed the British Empire, but he actually incurred the wrath of the Sikh community. And as one of our commenters said just the other day, Sikhs never forget. What happened to Michael O'Dwyer? He was assassinated by a Sikh in 1940. So he paid the price for that. But Gobind Singh's point here is, yes, he did set a precedent that it became almost normal for the state, whether it was the British Empire, whether it is now inherited by the Brahmin elite in India. They use these same methods of murder to maintain control over the population. So therefore, what is wrong in asking for sovereignty, James? Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally understand that argument and agree with it. So.
We had that story about Dhruv Rathi, this Indian YouTuber who incurred the wrath, talk about the wrath of Sikhs. He incurred the wrath of the community by his YouTube video about the story of Sikhs and one of the gurus. One of the early gurus, and as a result, there was a huge backlash. He had to remove his video. Pam from Birmingham, hello Pam. Khalistan Zindabad indeed. As you say, he didn't really know what he was doing, and he also told the history wrong. Absolutely, he did. But you did say earlier, he talked about Operation Blue Star and stated that Bhindranwale ji and Sikh army were terrorists. So yes, sadly, I think he was parroting the Indian narrative that Bhindranwale was a terrorist and they were all extremists, etc., which of course was not true. But this guy, this YouTuber, has just parroted just the narrative of India. Now, as TC follows up with again on the same point. TC's a little bit kinder about this and says, look, it was a shame because actually this guy has apparently put a lot of educational content on his channel for the benefit of many, many thousands. The only thing that doesn't make sense in TC's opinion is why now? The timing is really questionable, particularly everything that was going on. He's had an opinion about Khalistan. He's obviously had a go at Amritpal Singh. But the question is, why did he do it now? But you just do say it was unfortunate, it was ill-informed, he has apologised and has withdrawn the video to his credit. So, but yeah, I think, James, these two comments really do highlight the fact, I think this guy, as I said at the time, I think he didn't mean to be offensive. I think he's just a young guy trying to make a living on YouTube, obviously a very good living, and he's using whatever material he can find, but he is still a victim of India propaganda. He is still a victim of parroting the official Indian narrative, which of course is not true. It is a completely fabricated version of the truth. But like many Indians, he doesn't realise this. He is just a victim of propaganda, and that's all that I think has been regurgitated here. He's just regurgitating Indian propaganda without realising it is not true.
Absolutely. And another worry, of course, in the modern era of social media influencers is that more and more of them are using, ChatGPT or DeepSeek and such. So they rely overly on certain programs to give them the data and the information, and don't do enough to actually fact check anything that they get brought in. So sometimes you'll see some of these younger YouTubers or less experienced people in terms of the journalistic world and keeping that professional part of it. So again, I don't believe that he intentionally set out with any nefarious intent. So
yeah, and I think also, like many YouTubers, he is having his churn rate. In other words, how quickly he has to produce videos is so fast that he just doesn't have the time in the day to research properly. He just has to produce it, get it out there, and is moved on to the next one without realising that he might have done something wrong. So I think there is a huge element of that. So, Avatar Dylan talks about Indira Gandhi and Thatcher. They were, like you say, they are both residing in hell now. And then he's continued to say, these beautiful things are made by God. They're like flowers that slowly wither away. And this is why most people lose the game. Knowledge from the guru is key. And I think that is the important message here, is the guru's knowledge, in other words, the truth, is key. That's what always prevails. And as you say, good day, guys. Well, a good day to you, Avatar Dylan, as well. So, James, as we often say on this channel, the truth always wins in the end. I think as Avatar Dylan says, knowledge from the guru is key. And I think that is essentially saying the same thing. The truth always prevails in the end.
Absolutely. And let's just keep in mind that, long-driven hate just only turns the heart black, Angus. So, again, to embrace the principles of the guru and to move forward with knowledge is so essential because it allows you to keep perspective and an emotion in check.
Indeed, and thank you to Hat B for correcting my Punjabi. I thought my Punjabi was fluent, how dare you? As he says, the translation of the comment at the end was spot on, but you say it like this, and then you go and write it. So I'm going to have another go at this, and I have no idea if this is right. Danwad Bhai Sahab, Junde Vazde Raho, Kush Raho, Abad Raho. So there you go, James. I have no idea if that was right or wrong, but no doubt Hat B will come back and let me know how bad or otherwise that was. Anyway, on to our final set. Harjeet Rosha. This comes under our banner of ones that make us chuckle. Greetings to you, Harjeet Rosha. You enjoy the show? Well, thank you. We enjoy your comments. They do make us laugh. I wonder if I asked AI or artificial intelligence, this is one for you, James, to put turbans, moustaches and beards on us and have us shout, Bole Sonny Haaland, Sat Sri Akal. You both, James Singh and Angus Singh, would look very handsome indeed. Thank you. Just curious. Well, James, I think you're going to have to use your AI skills to turn us into Sikhs.
I'm just going to say, if for the viewer there, if you do that, you must share with us, because we'd love to see it if you're able to do that through AI. So let us know. We'll look forward to it.
And I think, sadly, with the rate of my beard growth, if you're prepared to wait about 30 years, I might be able to actually grow a natural one. But
They're going to have to use AI for both of us, I think, Angus.
And then Free Spirit talks about the 7th of June. Yes, James, you must be there if you can. It would be great to see you in person. Free Spirit says, now you would like to invite me too, but yes, it is sadly just a little bit too far for me. But you will be there, James, will you?
On the 7th, I will not be in San Francisco, if that's what you're referring to, I assume. I won't be in San Francisco right now. I just don't bother crossing the border, even though I live 5 minutes from it. It's just too much of a pain in the butt right now. And it's just not something I'm willing to do right now with our dispute with the U.S., and we'll see.
Of course, yes, I forgot. It's in California, that one, the 7th of June. So, yes, unlikely, sadly, Free Spirit, that James will be there. Yeah. But they're in spirit. But there are other events around the diaspora, and all our audience, get out there, be seen, as we do say. And the final comment of the day goes to John Darrier. And thank you for this. Through Satluj TV, the world is knowing about Sikhs and Sikhism, although Sikhs don't bother to tell anyone to attract to Sikhism. Yeah, now this is a point I have raised, actually, is that Sikhs do not broadcast their own goodness to everybody. They just get on quietly, and they just get on and do what they do, as they do so well. They are not known to, as I use the phrase often, they don't blow their own trumpet. That is just not who Sikhs are. They just quietly get on and do their good work. It is up to people like James and I to broadcast the world and tell the world outside the Sikh community, to tell others, saying, look, this is who Sikhs are, this is what they do, have a look, take a look at the evidence of the contribution, the massive contribution to our global society that Sikhism has brought. This is why you, as a global community, need to get behind the Sikh community and certainly push for their demand for their own sovereign state, because it will be a good thing on this planet once Khalistan is established. And the final comment from John Darragh is, India, you're going back to this comment about India. India is indeed going towards India, James.
Well, let's hope not. Let's hope that they can find a way to give some sovereign nations their opportunity, while at the same time using it as a stepping stone to move India forward, but also recognizing the sovereign nations to work together and build a solid future of peace and harmony.
Absolutely right. And on that note, and looking at the clock, we're way over time as usual, so we must draw things to a close for another day. But please don't forget to keep those comments coming in. Thank you to all of you who have commented. There have been some fantastic comments. So thanks very much indeed for those. Don't forget you can message us directly at message@satlujtv.com if there's anything you'd like to bring to our attention directly. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.